It's been special. Yesterday, we talked a lot about agriculture. We talked a lot about sustainability. And the idea today is to bring this profile of this producer. How is this new producer here in Brazil? And the three of you are representatives and are going to talk a lot about this. I have no doubt about that the profile of the producers have changed a lot in the last decades. Along with the evolution of Brazil, there's been a bigger demand for technology. I have no doubt that you're going to talk a lot about this issue. Innovative practices. The producer wants to use this and those practices that increase soil efficiency, reduce the use of inputs, water care. We also talk a lot about there's a generation that came from direct planting. Today we talk about precision agriculture, agriculture 4.0, 5.0, crop management using data. It's a spectacle to talk about this 4.0, unmanned aircraft. This is a reality nowadays. We also have other discussions we have, which is carbon. We are discussing how to storage the carbon from soil and reduce the emissions of carbon. This producer of this year, everyone's going to talk about these advancements. Those practices are modern, and the new technological wave of the field will be the focus of this panel. We're going to start with we we're going to start with Milton and then Fabio and Carlos. Milton, it's up to you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here, greeting my colleagues here. I'm going to do a presentation of the company that I work, which is Brasil Biofuels. We work in the North region in 5 states: Acre, Amazonas, Pará, Rondônia, and Roraima. A brief history about Brazil Biofuels. We are a company that has been recently funded in 2008 and is to leverage the development, social and economic sustainable, to integralize the movement of unity to replace the fossil fuels in the Amazon. This model basically is the extraction and production of palm oil to transform it in a biofuel in the place and replace the big number of thermoelectrical that has in the Amazon forest and substitute by this new form. And we have 38 nowadays thermoelectrical, 68,000 hectares. We have more than 6,500 jobs and 12,000 tons of oil. About the sustainability and palm. Palm is a perennial plant. It cannot be mechanized. The process is 100% manual, and it is widely produced in Southeast Asia. 3 countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, in this order, are responsible for 85% of the oil production in the world. Brazil is less than 1% of this production. So we have excellent potential, and I'm going to talk a little about this later. We're going to talk about this later. It's been approved. It was approved in May 2010. The zoning agroecological for palm culture, palm crops. Brazil has the principal legislation for this with comparing other countries in the world. This law says that it is prohibited to plant in the national territory unless it is an area that is being used until December 2007. If you want to plant this in Brazil and you need this licensing, environmental licensing, we are able to know if this area is in the zone. What we did to after the happening of this law, we went to more remote regions, like in the state of Roraima, where they have this industry installed, and we started to this plant, and we started to develop the palm in these degraded areas. These areas didn't have agricultural activity. It was quite the opposite. In this region, in 1974, was created the second biggest Incra place in Brazil, and there had more than almost 2,000 families there. They went to a motto: integrate, not to deliver. There was a dispute between Guyana, Venezuela, and Brazil, and they had to protect against any agreements who would want to take this area from Brazil. And the people had the dream to work this land, but Roraima is isolated from the rest of Brazil by the Amazon forest, and there was no way um, to pass this production. So the people who live there had to look for products in farther areas to survive. And you have more than 3,000 hectares that are degraded that produce absolutely nothing. So what we did is to install the project. We founded the company in Roraima. We started to plant, and the thermoelectrical power plants that generated energy in these cities, these towns, that the federal government had to pay for the diesel to make 1 liter to generate energy. We replaced that for energy that's produced locally. We extracted oil, transformed this oil in biodiesel, and used the same infrastructure of energy generation, replacing the fuel. So nowadays, BBF has given a second step. We left this first step and we developed a step ahead. Nowadays, we have a plant of biodiesel being built in Manaus with a refinery where we're going to transform oil, vegetable oil, and green diesel that's not biodiesel, and with SAF, which is a fuel, sustainable aviation fuel. These two kinds of fuels, they are very important because Brazil today exports diesel. We don't have in Brazil difficulty with petrol. We have difficulty with refineries. Nowadays, they supply 75% of local demand. When you have a petrol refinery, we have the more light, and you have the asphalt. You have different kinds of byproducts of extracted from oil. Brazil doesn't need gas to import gas. Petrobras imports a lot of gas and spends billions to do that. And we don't need the heavy products. The solution for BBF in Brazil is perfect because we recover the degraded area, produce what Brazil imports, which is aviation kerosene and diesel oil, in a very practical way, recovers the forest and the cost and creates jobs that in a region that needs 25 million people with almost no opportunities of jobs. In the countryside of Amazon, there aren't many job options. As I said, the palm cannot be mechanized. They employ a lot of people, a big number of people. We are developing this in Roraima for the refinery in Manaus, and we're going to start working to 2025, and we'll generate 12,000 jobs. They will plant in Roraima 120,000 hectares, and the refinery in Manaus because of the distribution. This is proof of the success when they replaced biodiesel with the fossil fuel. These 38 thermoelectrical are in these 5 states: Rondônia, Roraima, Amazonas, Acre, and Pará. And we also have another perspective as the clusters where we extract the palm oil produce uh, a waste about 25 tons, and 5 tons you extract oil. We have this surplus of biomass. We generate the energy from biomass. So from this, we have a thermoelectrical of 17 megawatts. The technology that is taken beyond biodiesel. The integration of the productive chain. Basically, this is the process. It's interesting, palm, because palm oil is the most consumed by humanity. Brazil cannot bear to be only 1% because the humanity is the most used oil. It's not difficult to commercialize, to sell around the globe. You can transform them in biofuel and transform this biofuel in megawatts. Each step of the chain, we aggregate value, we add value. The energy in this system connected, that the energy system in 80% of Brazilian territory, the tariff is about 200 to 250 reais in megawatt an hour. In this place is in the north is about 2,000 to 4,000, and who pays this is every Brazilian citizen. So every Brazilian citizen shares the cost of this, and by the constitution we have the same right of the infrastructure of the country. So this model is not good only to the Amazon region, but for all Brazilians, because this tax is going down along the time that we've been working. What really highlights the forum we were working, when you talk about a company that has more than 6,500, works in 5 states, and use agricultural product, where is technology on biofuels? This is the answer. In 2022 until today, we have had 6 new patents. In the second semester, we have 1 more patent. Next year, we are developing 13 new patents. So we have been perfecting is to make bigger this chain to other products. The internal fruit of palm, the CPKO, the palm mist oil, there are more than 300 chemical products that use this. What we are doing is this work of working with solvents, surfactants that came from petrol. We are replacing competitively. These green products are not necessarily going to be more expensive in scale and to avoid export. It is very gratifying to see that this perspective has since from one who works directly on the land with the palm but goes through different stages to the engineers. In the workers of BBF workforce, we have more than 80 engineers, chemical, electrical. It's a different step. Myself, when I speak about BBF, people are surprised. What can you compare in the world with a company that has this kind of behavior and vision? It is rare to find, and Brazil has this prevalence. We are always innovating, bringing a lot of knowledge and technology to Acre. And that's how I finish my presentation. Over to you, Teca. He thanks a lot. You finished 6 minutes earlier. You brought a lot of important things when you talk about vegetable oil, when you talk about green diesel, some collocations that we can speak later. And you have Brazil as an exporter of diesel oil. It's very important. Some other collocations when you say about recovery of degraded areas and also of green forests, and also when you talk about the Brazil in Roraima, then almost 90,000 families, the worry nowadays of BBF are with this few job options and how BBF is going to help to generate jobs for everyone. That's how you started your speech. And now over to Fabio, going to talk about. There's another number. Brazil has 5 million rural properties. I like a lot to talk about this. More than 15 million people occupy those properties. So that's what we're talking about. It's up to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Milton, congratulations. Later, I have a few questions for you as well, to you as well. So I'd also like to thank the Datagro family for this event and for inviting me for this panel. And I will talk a bit about what what is how it looks like in the area where I am and what am I seeing. My name is Fabio. I'm a fourth generation of producers. It's everything started with my grandma, then my great grandma, my grandfather, my father, and now myself. So I'm responsible within our family business to manage it all. And we're near the Pontal do Paranapanema region. It is northwest of São Paulo. We have most of it is sugarcane, a smaller part is grains, and we have some 400 partners working in our properties, and we have people working with 1 hectare or 2,000 hectares. We have a large partner profile. We bringing their own knowledge and the use of technology that is very different between them. And we have we're seeing how they evolve that and how they work with new technologies throughout the years. So one of the main issues here is how more and more the producers are connected with the world. I believe that the perception of a global world with internet and mobile phones, producers in general, they've been learning more and more the world and understanding their connections with the world and how to reduce costs, how to apply technology, innovations of different parts of the globe, new technologies, ways to crop management, how to understand pricing. People don't hit the spot every time, but they try. And many times, each time we have discussed this for many times, and there is a perspective of the main issues and a perspective of how this impacts your daily life. Uh, we used to think that, well, if something happens in Russia, that doesn't impact me. But now we're seeing that more and more these issues do impact in our lives and the lives of the producers. All the way from someone who has a large operation, a milk producer, maybe geopolitical issues and geopolitical interests impact your cost, but your selling price impact your clients, and the truck cost, the freight cost as well, either for freight from farm to plant or plant to consumer. So these global supply chains, we've seen due to the pandemics that they all were broken. Um, Sometimes you have a route that has 100 and it goes to 0, and one that was 0 goes to 1,000, and we don't have electronic circuits for our devices or our cars, and you don't we're having problems with the tire logistics. Sometimes you have a flat tire but you don't have tires to replace it. And so producers in general, they get updated on these issues. Maybe we haven't reached about these issues, but they're trying to understand it. Another issue that is growing in importance is communication. We have been discussing this for some time already, and we discussed this yesterday. And how can we communicate or advertise agribusiness in the real world agribusiness? Because sometimes we think sustainability, it's in my veins. It's in my blood because I'm fourth generation. If we weren't sustainable, I wouldn't be here today. If we were doing something wrong, you know. So how do we advertise that in an open way? Clearly, everyone that is working in agribusiness today, they're proud of doing so. They're proud of working with agribusiness. We talk about agribusiness as a producer of food, but how do we? And we forget to talk about agribusiness in terms of making water available. And how do we communicate this? We're not that far. Sometimes we're very away from the cities, and people in the cities, even people in the cities nearby, they don't know quite well what we're doing. Sugar cane, for a few years now, we have zero wildfires policy, and we we respected that. And there's difficulty that to advertise that you're not doing that anymore, that you're not putting your crops on fire anymore. So how do we communicate this better? Because this affects society, and there's a will, but there's also fear to be labeled, to have bad comments on your initiatives. So there's a will to do so, but they're concerned to communicate it. So they're afraid of communicating on a constant basis. Another issue is, how do we measure for real this sustainability? Because when we're talking about sustainability, we have a trend of always looking towards the environment side of it, but how agriculture, and I see a lot of people talking about this. Let's have an advertisement to maybe tell people what we're doing for sustainability. Maybe a festival or something at a rural district, and to enable people, to train people to be more sustainable. They could have an extra income. So how do we measure this impact? And I believe this is very important. And we have the financial market helping out with this. Um, it's a very important role that they have, because they have a strategy to reinforce this on the producer. So I understand that this is a trend to how do we reduce, not eliminate, but how do we reduce the use of chemicals in crops, and how can we make better use of biological or organic minerals. I understand that there is a higher interest from producers in general. Of course, in terms of they think about costs as well. There's the issue of quality of water, and you need good water. And in the end, this good water is produced by you. So it's very difficult today, at least in my area, to have a water fountain that is not protected. So this is very interesting. Also, in terms of biogas and biofuels, biodiesel, and all these biofuels, more and more we hear how they could replace diesel. So this is also a trend. And we have biodigesters and people using this kind of strategy. There's also the issue of technology and a growing interest in the use of technology. Of course, we need to understand the metrics. We always used an average, but with technology we're more precise. And how do we measure by points? And the search for tools and technologies, I believe this is occurring on a constant basis. More and more people want to know what's going on and what's the cost of it. A trend of autonomous devices or autonomous working vehicles per se. And how this equipment can be implemented in the field to work, because someone always needs to input information and provide instructions for this equipment. So how can we apply this? Because we want to understand these new systems. We discuss a lot about how do we understand a radar graph or a geographic imaging, a geoimaging for biomass. So I believe there's a search for knowledge and the applicability of these tools. Last year we had 3 frosts, and this is very unusual. And we've used geoimaging to change our crops. Historically, we had to go to the site, take samples, and now we can work with geoimaging to do that. Of course, uh, those who were doing this, working with geoimaging, they were kind of insecure to understand if it was working or not. So we have a guy that's been with us some 35 years working for us, and we asked Roberto. There's a guy named Roberto, and we call him to be the to do the assessment. And so, but he said, "Well, this if I knew this would work so well," he said his words, "If I knew this would work so well, we could have implemented this some 10 years ago." So it's his assessment of the technology. So more and more, the use of it broadens. More and more, we're more digital, and distances they get wider. And there is a search for knowledge. I see a constant investigation and questioning and doing a more refined search for knowledge. They ask a lot more, and they're not afraid to do so. So there's a trend here for a more accurate debating, because now if you go to Google, there's 50 different answers, and you need to find the one that meets your profile or answers your question precisely. So this is a search, and it's very interesting to compare empirical with scientific knowledge. How do we compare? How do we have this struggle between the two? And how do we take the best of each one? There's a very interesting leap from each one. Sometimes we have like grandfathers and grandchildren to work, and sometimes we even see grandfathers telling their grandsons, some sort of technology that they need to use, and the grandchildren, they have to say, we don't have the technology out in the field. Well, grandpa says, you figure it out, put a mobile tower there, I don't know, but use this technology. So this exchange is very intense, and it's very interesting, and it helps out. So it helps the little guy, the big guy helps the little guy. It works for everybody. I believe this is it. I guess I'm over time already. This is great. You still had some 3 minutes. Well done, everyone. Great. Okay, this was great, Fabio. I just wanted to tell everybody listening. I'm sorry, I'm not using the phone. I have some back noise, so I can't have my phone on. Fabio, this was very interesting to listen to. I guess it's our panel, the new profile of the new producer profile. you had this interesting overview, and then at the end you mentioned the satellite use of satellites and mobile phone networks, and you've mentioned Russia. I believe you mentioned the Ukraine war. This is something new for us. This is a connection that we have in the last months, and you have this impact in supply chains. I believe this is it. Brazilian producers at this moment, we came out of COVID, and now with this war we have a global vision. We're not used to this. We used to be each one in your little world. So, and they've talked about the communication in agribusiness, and you mentioned something that I love. Sustainability is in my blood. I don't need to talk about this. If we did not do, if we weren't sustainable, I wouldn't be here today. So yeah, sometimes I say that I have a lot of invitations to talk outside of the agro world, and I love it. I love this because I have the opportunity to take our view. I'm a producer. I'm a livestock owner, and I started a long time ago, and I wouldn't be here today if we weren't sustainable. And it's very interesting hearing you say, that we're also water producers. So, Milton, also, you mentioned about this impact and talk about the regions. Being here, upstate São Paulo, it's such a different reality from our colleague in the Amazon. This is very interesting. Another issue that you brought in, that is the 80 years of your business. It's the different generations. The one that you mentioned, the history about Robertão. This is very interesting. And now please, Carlos, now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Teca. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you, especially you up front. I thank the organizers, Datagro, for the opportunity to speak with you about the new producer profile and how this platform, the global platform of coffee that we know as GCP, is working to help the small coffee producer now in the future in Brazil, in the world. Because depending on the criteria that we adopt, little coffee producers are 90% in the world, 80% in Brazil. And in Brazil, they are 50%, half of the production. I am very glad, Teca, that we have talked with Fabio before, because I ran the risk. I was going to repeat many of the things he said that are applicable to coffee with some adjustments. A lot of people of the items that Fabio mentioned. I'm going to focus now on my presentation something different on the difficulty to take these to small producers, because the big producers are the first to adopt. So how can we get to these producers? So the Global Coffee Platform is a pre-competitive that was established in Switzerland, has a central headquarters in Germany, involves the business from the seed to the cup with 120 members around the world. GCP has national platforms of sustainability, teams working actively in 7 countries that represent about 70% of the production of the world production of coffee. Our focus is in the prosperity of the coffee producer, especially the small producer, because without income, it's very hard that the producer to be socially and environmentally sustainable. So this is a challenge. There is a very big challenge. This is the list of the GCP members in the world in alphabetical order. Brazil is the country that has the biggest number of members. Carlos, you might be thinking that Carlos is the president of the platform board because Brazil has the biggest number of members. No, that's not it. It's because Brazil is the example, is a role model for the rest of the world. And also because we exported equipment for more than 100 countries in the world. So this has given from the countries, the producing countries that define the policies. We talk with the producers, with the government, with export. The members of GCP that are facing you are from the sectors of production, trade, of commerce, industry, and the third sector, the civil society. The sectors and societies that are represented shows the scope and diversity of GCP. It's not easy to have all these interests met. The countries, you have people from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and one for Brazil, just one. That show how Brazil is important to this agribusiness coffee. In the industry, you have Nestlé and JDE, Pilão in Brazil, and among other. Canadian Mother Parkers, Western Rock and Rezende from United States. They supply McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, and etc. The commerce is two biggest traders, Econ and OFI, the new name of Hollande. And the third sector have some of the main stakeholders of Conservation International, Solidarity, Rainforest, Human Development ADDI, and a board on Rabo Bank, that as a bank that is connected with agriculture. To be in this panel talking about the profile of the new producer, because GCP 2.0 that we'll be building in the next 8 or 10 years is working exactly in these profiles, with emphasis in the sustainability in the small producer of coffee in the world. On GCP 2.0, we create national platforms of sustainability for the 7 countries, national curriculums of sustainability, and initiatives of collective action. We develop bonds and relationships in the private and public sectors in these countries that we work on. On GCP 2.0, we want to improve the conditions, the livelihoods of 1 million coffee producers. 1 million coffee producers is very considerable. This is the three times the number of the producers in Brazil, because Brazil has 280,000 producers. I'm going to use this base that is already created to promote their top-down to create prosperity. Focusing on the producer, they need more the income, so it's a shared responsibility from the seed to the cup, not the other way around, because it has to start at the top, from the cup to the seed, because if the supply chain and the consumer don't help to pay this bill, the producer, especially the small producer, won't be able to be sustainable. We want this and we dream about this, and we need to afford them the means. And there are many challenges in the world. The coffee producers are getting old. There is no prosperity. There is a climate crisis. They don't have finance access. To face those challenges, the productive chain, and the governments have to cooperate. And there is also challenges because public and private efforts are not aligned. Global action, what they want abroad, is not aligned with the local context. There's a lot of there's a lot of discussions from top down. We need more group actions. Brazil, the coffee agribusiness in Brazil is a very successful story to face those challenges, even though there's a lot to do yet. In 1990, when the quotas of the International Organization of Coffee ended, and also of the Brazilian Institute of Brazil, the agribusiness progressively woke up. The research has been organized. The rural extension was taken by the states that are produce coffee. It started to there's been like a campaign to people to consume more coffee in Brazil, and it jumped from 6 to 20 bags of coffee. We have different kinds of coffee, special coffees, premium coffees, without any damage to the commercial coffees. And the coffee produced in Brazil gets one of the biggest shares of the export price in the world, 85 to 90%. The average in the world is 60% only. And finally, there's financing available, and coffee culture. The coffee producer has access to it in Brazil. The result of this is in this graph that you can see. In the last 20 years, the average production increased 80% from 31 to 52 million bags on average 4 years. Or the planted area decreased 20% because the productivity has almost doubled from 15 to 28 bags by hectare. The challenges of coffee farmer challenges in Brazil and the rest of the world, the result of the success of part of it, the Brazilian coffee farmer has one of the smallest average ages, is the youngest in the world. There's a succession from generation to generation. It is much more prosperous than the rest of the world, even though there's a lot of space for improvement. They have more access to financing than the rest of the world. There are high risk climates like other producers, and a bad image, external image, that doesn't help us in the part of sustainability. So to improve this 1 million plus coffee producers' lives, we need to focus on prosperity and the items of sustainability, like Fabio described it, coming as a consequence. For this, our lines of action will be to increase the income of well-being, prosperity, and sustainability. We have to include young people and women in the world. We have to transfer technology from big producers to small producers. As I heard from Milton and Fabio, that's what you are doing. And we need to do this more in Brazil and in the world. We need to implement regenerative agriculture. We also talked about this, to think about sustainability beyond the certification and increase the access to internet, which is basic to do all of this. I get fun when I say about to the producer that do you have a smartphone? Yes, we do, but it only is smart when I'm in the urban area, because in the rural area it becomes a dumb phone. So a lot of people in coffee culture don't have a smartphone. A lot of this is working in Brazil. There's a lot to do yet, especially in the case of the small coffee farmer. The collaboration challenges from GCP, which are called by CAIS, by their initials in English, are the answer of GCP to the collective challenge in the countries where we work on, including Brazil. What are CAIS? They derive from this base created by the national sustainability platforms, the national curriculum of coffee sustainability, and go through the code of reference of coffee sustainability. These guys are the way to share the responsibility via sustainability from cup to the seed. And in Brazil, GCP Brazil is on the lead of this process. Those initiatives, collective action initiatives, we have two in Brazil, to use agrochemicals and well-being, social well-being in Brazil. Those are initiatives, different initiatives. They are generally sponsored by the industry and commerce that fund this bill, but they are decided in the countries, producer countries, as they have been decided in Brazil. And the environmental area is next. What is different from this initiative from a project are the implementative agents. For example, the cooperatives, extension services, the traders of coffee. Uh, while the project is on, it's okay, but when it ends, it can come back to an older situation. So these results are felt every day in agriculture. This is the difference between initiative and project. In the Coffee Sustainability Reference Code, it's being developed, Fabio, to create a world reference, to create a language that is common for sustainability, including the consumer. The problem in coffee is there's too many people measuring and there's too many measurements, and the consumer gets lost with so many measures. What the platform is proposing is a basic code that works in all over the world, and the systems are doing their equivalents. There is 4C, the Brazilian Fructifica Minas, Fair Trade, Rainforest, UTZ, and Starbucks. These are, and also Econ, FI, Inveritas, Exportadora Gachupé, Mercon, Nespresso. The code of reference sustainability of GCP is on par with the goals of development of the United Nations. They also assess the pesticides, which is a very controversial subject. And the platform, even instead of giving a yes or no answer, they have a permanent committee that discuss this subject all the time, this issue. This reference code from GCP is a base to our annual reports. We call them snapshots of sustainable coffee purchases by industry and commerce. In 2019 and 2020, JDE, Melita, and it has increased from one year to the other. Melita, Nestlé, Strauss, Supra Café, and Tesco supermarket chain. It's a sustainable volume reported by those companies, it increased from 41% to almost half of it, 49%. The volumes that have been reported is about 34 million bags, 20% of the total world consumption. So we want more to use it. So people who are not very companies that are not so sustainable, they don't want to report it. But the aim of these reports is to how to engage the industry and commerce to buy more sustainable coffee, because sustainability has to come from the cup to the seat, and it's from the commerce and industry edges. I am very glad. I was very glad to when I was preparing this presentation last week, reading Valor Econômico newspaper, and in 4 days I saw a lot of news about this new producer profile. So agri, it continues to be tech and pop, but above all, people. This is what the three of us talked about here. But to create a bioscience company is much harder to create a financial or technological company, because it demands a lot of talent, knowledge, and time, and plant capacity, as Milton said. Of course, it is very hard to do everything I'm saying here, to make it happen with speed and scale without partnership between state and the private sector and policies. This is what the GCP aims and wishes. Thank you very much for your attention.
This was great, Carlos. I think everybody has gotten excited by your presentation. We almost had a tilt here with the amount of data that you sent us. But what's the amount? What's the percentage or the share of coffee planters that is small planters? Some 80% of coffee planters are small producers in Brazil. So, and the amazing is that some 80% of these has an average of less than $100 a month, an average income of less than $100 a month. You mentioned 1 million coffee planters, and your work is to improve this. So you talk about bonds, relationships, links, and I thought this is very special. And also, Fabio, you mentioned something, communication, and about the need to have good communication, and how the global coffee platform, how you need that, and you need to be accounted for. Another thing is from coffee cup to seed, or to seed from coffee cup. So and vice versa. So this is great as well. And you've mentioned that coffee plantation in general, it's a niche market, and it provides an opportunity for coffee planters. You brought in some numbers that inspire us, and I think this is great. You mentioned young producers as well, and mentioned the secession. But all three here, Milton also mentioned this. You talk about this better income. So also, finally, you've had this you're provoking us to be more honest about the data. So now we are open for questions. I believe there's someone who wants to ask a question. Please, we need a microphone. Maybe nobody. Maybe can I ask a question? Yeah, we can also ask questions among us. Andrea, please. It's just us and ourselves. So please, Fabio, can you ask Milton? Uh, 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 I saw that map. I had a number. I don't know if you can confirm this or not. Now that we have this pressure on diesel prices, when we look at it, is the number correct? Some 17% of Brazilian diesel consumed in Brazil is for energy generation and in the north region. Is this true? And if it is, how does this production capacity of biomass and solar data and local production, how could we reduce these diesel consumption and change it for biodiesel, maybe reduce diesel imports? I can't say exactly the number, I can't, but approximately some 3 billion liters of diesel that are dedicated for thermal energy, and we have replaced many of these power plants. They have reached many cities. For many reasons, they were the electricity there is diesel powered, and the question here is what is the renewable that is more adapted for that specific region? In the Amazon, it is very clouded. It's not without reason that it's called rainforest. When you use solar panels, you need a large open area, and it's difficult to find this at the riverside community. They live in the riverside, of course, and imagine if you go on environmental licensing to have some 3-4 hectares open forest there, and so there's an issue here. Another issue that is very relevant is how many jobs a solar panel creates. So that's what's more interesting about our solution. We're recovering this degraded area. Today we have Wilson Ferreira, one of Vibra presidents. He's also president of Latam and Azul. Even sustainability and credit. We had a flyover Roraima, and we had a presentation. See that some 82% of the working power is public servants. So this is the reality. If Roraima's GDP is almost zero, almost 100% of Roraima's food comes from other states, how this degraded area that we're flying over could produce something? And this is degraded not by agribusiness. It has been degraded by an institution of agricultural settling back in the 70s. Now, those working with the agribusiness, like your family, you know that it's not worth the price of land and the culture that you want to implement there. But it's the consuming market. I could give away the land, but when you produce here, and whatever production you have here, the consuming markets, you have all your margin on your logistics, because you have to transport to the largest tropical forest in the world. And we have two countries, Venezuela and Guyana. It's difficult to talk about exports with these countries. And when you see the largest producers in terms of grains, we have the largest state, the largest producing state in the world is Mato Grosso. So you have the answer right here for all this, for all your questions about this. What I showed for large aviation companies is that we're going to produce fuel here that is cheaper than petrol. And this, what I'm saying here is revolutionary because these fuels like SAF and HVO in the European and US market, they cost 4 to 6 times of fossil fuel. And here we have the possibility to compete on even with oil barrels on the base of $50. So hear me out how spectacular this solution is. Yes, absolutely, it's very interesting. Please, yes, go ahead. Hello, hello, hi. Good afternoon, all. First of all, I'd like to congratulate your moderation, Teca. Thank you very much. You're a fresh breeze in the agriculture of Brazil, and we need young people and women on our side. It will be amazing to have that, and I'd like to congratulate the panelists. I'm from Ener Sugar as producer. Fabio is from Great Taruma area, and I'm from Great Palmitau area. A joke about the size of the cities. And I had the opportunity to drink coffee at Fabio's grandfather plantation, and his grandfather was saying how important coffee is and how we own coffee, the development of our country and our state. We take coffee as sugar, right? And Carlos is in a position where he's poking the wound here. Um, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Milton, sorry. Milton from BFF. It's right there with, poking the wound. And everybody is saying, who can answer for Brazil in global forums because Brazilian ambassador can't do it, and they don't want to listen to Brazilian ambassadors. But I know I just found out someone who can speak for Brazil in these global forums. I believe that you could be this person. So congratulations for your work. So my question is, um, maybe I can answer. I can have two questions, very brief. For Carlos, why is it that we only see advertisements from Colombian coffee, and Brazil is so have such an outstanding role in coffee, globally speaking? And Fabio, whoever sees him wearing this blazer doesn't recognize, because he's a very hands-on guy. He's always his boots are tainted red because of the dirt. And one of the concerns that we always had, is for new generations. We could not see new generations with potential. So, Fabio, what's your feeling among all your 400 partners? What's your feeling? Has this changed? I was president of the Suppliers Association, and I haven't seen it really. So I wanted to hear from you if you have the same feeling that I do. Do you see new people coming in? Maybe Carlos could answer first. This is an interesting question. It takes time. It's complicated, but let me try to do it fast. First, because Colombia invested a lot in marketing, because historically, and all the problems that they had internally with drugs, it was very important for them to promote the country. And the product that they had spearheading this initiative was coffee. And Brazil we missed this integrated action with the public sector and the private sector joining hands. And then we have Fun Café that have a few billion. Uh, uh, it's $1 billion size business. But when we want the private sector, we ask the private sector to do that. They tell that the Fun Café should do it because they're large, because they have difficulties to invest in lost fund because they invest in marketing. But this doesn't return to the government. But Brazil has walked a long way in this direction. He's the founder of the Special Coffee Association from the 2000s, 2005. He started an initiative, and 2 months ago in Guarujá City, the a senior executive of Starbucks, she mentioned that Brazil is the main supplier for the Starbucks chain. Silvio, I have seen a lot of new people, especially autonomous, that are somehow working. And these professionals, they've been working with the families, either they're doctors or some other sort of professionals. And they've been joining hands and getting closer to the plantation, to the production families. I have seen this a lot. Okay, everyone, someone came and talked to my ear saying that we need to stop. So, they're pinging here, the end. So, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here today. It was great. Thank you very much to all.